Today in the queue, I am joined by John Munsell, a technology entrepreneur, educator, and AI strategist who helps businesses turn AI from a buzzword into a real scalable capability. John, you're in the queue. Welcome.
Hey, Mike, thanks for throwing me in the queue. I'm glad I made it to the front of the line all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, we're kind of friendly here, so I think you'll make it. But we're so glad you're here. There's so much about you to discuss, and we don't have a lot of time. But um, introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us about your journey. You've created some amazing tools, which we'll talk about, and of course, you're thinking about AI a lot these days, so we definitely want to get your thoughts. But give us a little background. And you've built companies, and so you've got a lot of experience that can help our listeners.
Sure, yeah, 1,000 mile an hour backstory. I could go way far back, but I'll try not to, Mike. But I spent 15 years in financial services, which is frankly how I made it to Tampa. Um,
Yeah.
and um, and then when in '97, when the web came out, I was like, "Whoa, this is where the world's going. I need to dive off." And so I ejected financial services and I started a software development company, and we built web applications for people. And that
Was
was
that
back when
Bazooka?
there weren't any. Yeah, that was Bazooka. So it's still Bazooka, but so we built web applications for people, and then we built our own web content management system because none existed back then.
Hmm.
And then we were scheduled to close on a funding round of a little north of $1 million at 2 p.m. on September the 11th, 2001.
Oh no.
And obviously that meeting got canceled and we ended up losing the funding. And so but we had developed this intellectual property, and it was a developer's tool at the time. And I thought, well, you know what? I think what we have to do is completely pivot the company. And so instead of using this as a developer's tool, let's give it a UI, a user interface, and let's flip it
Mhm.
to where our clients can use the tool. And what that tool was is it allowed them to add features to their website by just clicking a button. Like they had a menu and they could add a press release section or job board or whatever they did. And so
Hmm.
instead of selling six-figure websites, we sold 4 and 5 figure websites and licensed the software to them. So we became a SaaS company before SaaS was even an acronym,
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know. And then we eventually relocated to Lafayette, Louisiana, where my wife was born and raised. So we had 4 kids. We moved them all over here. And we gradually grew into a digital marketing agency, as you know, a web design company would, right?
Yeah.
And then 2022 ish, I started playing around with AI. And this is back when there was just copy AI, and it was called Jarvis at the time. It's called Jasper
Right.
now, but
Yeah.
you familiar? Okay. Yeah. And I was like, this is cool, but it talks in circles, right? But it's cool. And then I decided, my wife and I, our kids had all graduated from college, and we thought, man, it'd be fun to be empty nesters and get rid of 40 employees and kind of be a little bit more portable. So I sold off the agency side, and I thought I was going to become a fractional CMO.
Hmm.
And then I started to work with CEOs every Friday in this thing I called the CXO Roundtable, which was a way for me to just kind of pool together people who were interested in talking about business and marketing. These were the CXOs. And because I had to use AI, right, to go, when you go from 40 down to 2.5, you have to supplement. And so I didn't supplement with the Philippines. I was supplementing with AI. And people, they were way more interested in how I was using AI than they were about marketing. And so I thought,
Right.
well, now I know what problem the market wants solved. And so that's when I
Yeah.
started to completely shift gears, not be a fractional CMO, but instead dive into this new frontier, which was AI. And right about that time, ChatGPT got released to the public. And that's when I was like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. They just took the training wheels off the bike and we can now ride. And so that's basically what shifted. And then I started to develop frameworks. I started to teach the frameworks to people.
Yeah.
And then as I was teaching people, the provost of LSU called me, and I didn't even know what the heck a provost was, Mike. So he said, "Hey, I heard you're doing some good things. You want to come over? Can I come over and see you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I just thought a provost was like an intern. I didn't know. I don't speak academics, right? So he comes over, introduces himself, and he says, "Well, I'm the executive vice president and provost of LSU. Do you know what that is?" I'm like, "Honestly, no." He goes, "Okay, well, there's the president, and then there's me." And I'm like,
Ah,
"Oh, I see now." So anyway, he was telling me what they were doing, and then he asked me what I was doing, and I showed him the frameworks. I'd created this thing called the AI strategy canvas, which explains to
yeah.
people what AI needs in order to give you the best result. Instead of using an acronym based framework where you spell something clever, I was like, you need more than that. And so I based it off of something called the business model canvas. And I took basically that same concept, and it's a grid. You just have to see it to understand it. But it shows everybody exactly what needs to go into AI, but it also gives you a common language to have a discussion about AI, no matter where you are in the pecking order in an organization. If you're the CEO and you're talking to an IT person, and then there's an HR person, they all understand it from the same lexicon, and they all
Yeah.
know what needs to go in AI. And then it turns out that same framework, the AI strategy canvas, is what you would use to create a prompt to really make AI work well. So when I showed him that, he's like, "Whoa, that's really cool. Do you have the prompts that mirror this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I showed him how we use containers and variables and all this stuff. And he's like, "Whoa, I've never seen anything like that." And then he asked me to teach the honor students. And I'm like, "Dude, I have no desire to become a professor." so, but I said, "Look, I think we could have a bigger impact on the world if we went through continuing ed, LSU's continuing ed, and we went straight to businesses, because my passion is about helping businesses and helping them retain more employees in this future thing called AI rather than replace them." So
Yeah.
that was my mission, just to teach people how to use it so they become more productive and add more value to their job and actually have more fun. So
So you transitioned with AI, which is different than a lot of people today. For a lot of people, what I hear, and maybe it's the same for you, John, that it just snuck up on us and suddenly it's
all right.
here. It was, just a theoretical idea. And suddenly now it's in real world applications and everyone's
Mm-hmm.
using it. And I'm way
Mm-hmm.
behind. And how do I catch up? But for you, you kind of grew into it. What are you hearing? Is that the same kind of feeling amongst the business owners that you talk to
Yeah.
and others?
Yeah, it's interesting, Mike, because where I am, I'm I'm a bit of a propeller head. Okay, so I mean, I've always been intrigued by software and marketing, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden, those worlds collide, right? And so, what I keep, because I'm like what I would call it, the bleeding edge of learning about it. So I'm following all the bigger thought leaders that are talking about the more complicated things, and I'm seeing where this thing is headed.
Mm.
And if we look at it as like a bubble, there's this big wave. I'm out here with a bunch of people just learning, going, "Oh man, it's coming, it's coming," and I'm teaching people, what I think is about right
Yeah.
here. And when I'm learning, I'm thinking, "Wow, the wave has passed me, and everybody is using it." And I kept thinking for a year, okay, I'm far behind. What I am finding out, Mike, is that they're way behind. The adoption curve is a myth that you see when you read people. All these places say 86, 96% of people or businesses have adopted AI.
Right.
What they don't tell you, or you have to read the fine print to understand, is adoption, AI adoption by McKinsey, by Ernst and Young, by KPMG, by Boston Consulting Group, you name it. When they talk about AI adoption, they're talking about one application in an organization that somehow has AI embedded in it. That's adoption. I completely disagree. To me, that's dipping your toe in the water, and it's a complete mirage. And my feeling is that AI adoption is getting 80% or more of your staff who uses a computer more than 30% of the day to use AI in their day-to-day jobs with their own fingertips, building their own tools. So it's not a single tool that somebody in IT is farting around with. It is everybody using it and building their own tools. That's when you have the massive impact. If we calibrate adoption by that, that's where I'm like, wow, there's a wave of people that are untrained. And when I deal with smaller businesses, let's say from 30 employees to 3,000, the adoption rate is probably closer to 20%, not 90%.
Right.
And the education level is almost 100% self-taught, which means that everybody has learned it a different way. There are no standards. There are no good habits. There are no common lexicons. There are no common processes, and there's no scalable or shareable knowledge in the organization. And that's a problem. So that's the problem we solve for organizations.
John Munsell, our guest, a technology entrepreneur. Tell us about Ingrain AI, John.
So, well, 2 years ago, people kept telling me you need to write a book about this, and so, are you familiar with the book Traction by Gino Wickman?
I've not read it, but I've seen
okay.
it.
So he developed something that he calls the Entrepreneur's Operating System, or EOS.
Yeah.
So he wrote that book about 15 years ago. Somebody told me about it. I read it. I was like, oh, we need to run our business on EOS. And so we implemented EOS on our business, and we were just doing really, really well. And then I found out there's such a thing as a certified EOS implementer. And I didn't know there was such a thing. I had thought you had to read the book. And so I got a friend of mine to become a certified EOS implementer. And then he helped us re-implement EOS. Okay. All based on this book called Traction. Well, I thought, you know what? If I could take our frameworks and put them in a book so that a small business could read the book and learn how to scale AI in their organization, that would be a thing. And that's what everybody convinced me to do. So I published that book. It's called Ingrain AI. I published it in April of last year. And it's not one of these things that you have to worry about the user interface changing, because ChatGPT came out with something new, and Claude came out with something new. It's about the principles of working with AI. So those are still tried and true, but somebody literally could read that book. And then what we did in October of last year is we started a program that we call the Ingrain AI Certified Implementers Program. So now we have implementers literally all over the world who are learning our frameworks, and they're working with smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses and teaching them how to scale AI in the organization. That is what Ingrain AI is.
That's beautiful. Everyone should read it. I mean, when you're looking there are a lot of books coming out. And I found most of the ones that I've read are lean technical. And that's probably not the best way to teach small business owners. Where I live, I'm talking to business owners who don't really have, obviously not coders, and they're not on the technical side. They want a tool. They hear great things about AI. So let's talk about that and maybe move into prompt engineering that you pioneered. It's so important for a small business owner. I mean, where do they start? I know overwhelm, AI overwhelm is a real thing. There's just so much coming out now. And if you go on any social media, web, you're just inundated with experts who are telling you how to make millions with AI. But what's the reality of it when you go into a small business or you're looking at helping entrepreneurs? Where do they start, John?
Well, I mean, what I tried to do with the book was bring it down to a level, because I've always been a small business, right? I mean, the most employees we ever had was 40. But I have worked with, back in my financial services days, I work with business that had 6,000 employees. So I've been all over the place, but I thought most of the books out there teach you why AI is important, or like you said, they get too far into the weeds. And what I wanted to say is, I'm going on the assumption that you understand that it's important, but you need to figure out how to get it really usable inside your organization. And that's really what the book is designed to do. What I teach is this process that we call scalable prompt engineering. And we have, now it's not in the book, but this is in my new book. I have another book that adds on to the next book, because now that we've worked with hundreds of businesses, I see new things emerging in the space. But we have this thing called scalable prompt engineering, and it's called scalable because everybody learns it the same way. And I could go look at somebody else's prompt and see exactly what it does, how it's structured, and I could swap out a container, is what we would call it, and swap in a new one and get it to completely do something completely new, that works for me. And so it becomes shareable knowledge. Now, we have this thing called 10 levels of AI mastery. And if you think of level one as just being able to ask AI a question, you get a response, and you're a genius, level 10 is when you're actually managing AI agents, autonomous AI agents. Now, that's a danger zone. So you can't go from level 1 to level 10 without breaking something, or putting yourself at severe risk. So you have to learn a little bit at a time. And so what's happening now is there are certain standards emerging in how AI works. And one of them is called Markdown, if you're familiar with Markdown as a file structure. If you understand scalable prompt engineering, it makes understanding Markdown a lot better, and you can improve how Markdown is structured. So that's kind of where my second book is going, so that when you get into what we would call level 5 and level 6, now you really can be producing some powerful tools. Does
What
that make
about the
sense?
businesses that are looking to purchase tools? Do you recommend that, or do you think everything should be developed in-house, customized to the business?
So here's the thing. Yes is the answer to the question, even though it's a yes no, it's an either or. So there was a study done by MIT 6 months ago that said 95% of AI initiatives fail, and they blamed it on tool selection. And I think they didn't diagnose that at all correctly. Because if you think about it, the way I look at it is, what's the density of AI expertise in the organization? And so when we're dealing with corporations, whether it's large or small, we have found that 90% or more of the employee base is operating at level 2 or 3. And an AI initiative is typically going to be a level 8 initiative. If the collective expertise in your organization is trapped at level 2 or 3, how can you possibly build a level 8 application and expect it to be a success? Even if you brought in an outside team, you wouldn't be able to contribute to that, right? And so they would end up making something that's brittle, because you don't have the expertise to give them what they actually need. But on the other end, if you upskill your employees to where the majority of them are operating at level 6 or level 7, and they're building their own unique tools, they have ideas for new tools that they can't build on their own, and they need to collaborate across the departments. So they need to maybe involve IT. They might need to involve legal. They might need to involve finance. Now you got a really powerful application, but you got people that understand how to use AI, and they all now speak the same language, and they all know who needs to be in the room to contribute to that. That's the path that people should be taking.
Yeah. That would take a lot of trust on the part of the companies, right?
What, to teach their people, or
Yeah, my experience is that companies, and maybe it's just lack of experience, but they're a little hesitant to open up AI use. They might be okay with letting the team use Copilot,
Mm.
on, Windows.
Yeah,
But
so
beyond
that's
that, giving them
fair.
tools if they're not IT, right?
Yeah, yeah. Now that's fair. Look, we ran into this back in the early web days
Yeah.
when, because HTML was essentially software, the website sat with IT, but it was a marketing tool. And so there was always this conflict between marketing and IT, right? Well, AI, because it appears to be software, does get locked into the IT realm.
Right.
The problem, so we have this thing that we call the three axis AI maturity model. So you've got 10 levels of AI mastery that I was talking about, right? As you move up those levels of mastery, the tools that you need become more complicated, right? So if you're level one, you can use ChatGPT, and as long as you're not putting in confidential data, you're fine. When you start getting up into level 5 and 6 and you start connecting it with other data sources, now you've moved up with the complexity of the AI architecture. Okay.
Mhm.
When you move up with the complexity of the AI architecture, a third thing happens, and that is your AI governance now needs to increase in its rules and regulations and oversight. So the three of those have to work harmoniously and in sync. So as your mastery goes up, so does the complexity of the AI architecture, and so does the increase in your AI governance. And so we work with businesses to stand that up so that they're not afraid. But if they're afraid to let people use AI, I got news for you, Mike. They're using it already and they're just not telling you. And you're at far more risk because you don't have the governance in place that says, look, we're going to let you use it, but we're going to oversee it. We're going to put you in a team environment or in an enterprise environment, and we're going to make sure it's locked down as tightly as we can. And then we're going to see who the power users are. And then we're going to make them champions, and we have this other thing that we analyze when we're creating governance, and we want to know: are you a producer? Are you an administrator? Are you an entrepreneur, like an idea guy, or are you a an integrator? Okay, those are the four archetypes, if you will. So
Yes.
a producer is somebody who just likes to produce work. Just leave me alone. I'll get the stuff done. Tell me what to do. I'll do it. An administrator is somebody like, I need to put the rules around this, like a bookkeeper, an accountant. I need
Yeah.
to have structure. An entrepreneur is the idea guy, the person who's always thinking of new ideas and creative ways. They may take more risks than the average bear. And then you have the integrator, and that's the person who likes to get everybody working together, creates community, creates culture, et cetera. Everybody is a little bit of both, but you typically have one dominant characteristic. If you create governance and everybody on there is more of an administrator mindset, you've got a really bad chemistry on that team. You have to have some entrepreneurs on there. And so when we're working with teams, we test for that as well as mastery, and we want to see where they are. So we make sure that we have the right structure of governance. And in a small company, you have to have a good balance, or your company is going to start to go backwards. It comes up this, by the way, this isn't my original thinking. This comes from a book called Corporate Life Cycles by a guy named Ichak Adizes, Adizes. But that's where I learned all this. And again, we're working right now with Tulane University. We're helping the operations side stand up AI governance, and it's a 2-year process because it's a long process when you have to train that many thousand employees.
Yeah.
But you better get it right. And governance is not just about putting rules and regulations. It's about watching people go through the process and making sure they all learn it the right way. And there's a baseline of productivity. And you want to see, okay, well, if you're telling me you're now at a level 5, what task did you improve? Right? We when they go through our training, they have to take a 3-hour task and reduce it to 20 minutes. And that's part of what we call a capstone project, right? So we have
Yes.
to build a system to make that happen. I don't care whether you're a team of 12 or a team of 12,000, you have to have a process like that.
And that's exciting because I think the perception of AI in general is how it's going to come in and wipe out jobs and
Yeah.
that's it. But what you're talking about is learning more about your team, your employees, getting them interested in
Yeah.
working in, where they have the greatest skill sets and then combining it all to build this really strong. We had Lawrence Tyson on last week on the show talking about an ecosystem, a digital ecosystem. It kind of sounds what it's going to transform companies on a
Yeah.
positive note, which is good to get. So I appreciate that, where companies are actually digging into those skill sets
Mhm.
and reinvigorating the
Well,
staff and the
yeah,
team.
absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, what AI is currently doing is it is doing P&A jobs. It's doing production jobs and it's doing administrative jobs, but it's not going to be the idea person unless the idea person is driving that out of AI. And
Mm.
it's not going to create connective tissue between your organization. You need that person. So as it starts to take over, like your A jobs and your P jobs, your producer and administrative jobs, that frees you up to do other things that are more creative, right? And it helps you actually go, I'm driving this machine. But you if you don't teach people how to use those skills atrophy. Things like critical thinking, discernment, taste, all those things will atrophy if people think AI is better than them. And that's what we've been told. And sure, it knows the world's knowledge. It's a whole lot faster. It could be faster than every human on earth. But at the end of the day, we can't abdicate our internal aptitudes and expertise to the machine, or else we lose our own self-worth and value. And now you start to decay as a company, you decay as a culture. So we have to make sure that we keep that part of being human in the organization. And we have to cultivate that as this whole AI thing takes hold. And that's kind of what we want to do. Is I can see how a business could you have two choices. What I tell people, well, there might be a
Yeah.
third, but as you improve your AI skills, you increase your capacity, right? And so the more I create new capacity in an organization has a couple of choices. Most organizations are going to say, oh, we don't need you, right? What I want them to say is, I got this newfound capacity. I could sell into that capacity. If I can sell into that capacity, I expand my market share. And we had a guy who went through our training, and this is rapid story, but he's in the furniture business, office furniture. Works for one of the largest manufacturers on earth, and so they're doing massive office buildings, right? So he's always getting these RFPs, and they're 350-page RFPs, and he's got to filter through those and figure out, is there office furniture in here? If so, are they desks? Are they chairs? Are they coffee tables? Whatever. What are they? And does it meet our design spec? He said it would take them 3 to 6 hours just to determine whether or not they wanted to propose to that RFP. If they said, yeah, it's a go, let's do this, it would take them 2 weeks and 2.5 people to prepare the response to the RFP. Inside of our training, he built a tool. All right. So this is him using Claude. Okay. He started off using GenSpark because that's what I told him to try. Then he switched to Claude, because Claude Opus 4.6 came out. I said, you need to try it. Now switch to Claude. He built a tool that would analyze that RFP, a 350 plus page RFP, and he could get to a go no go decision in 20 minutes instead of 3 to 6 hours.
Whole different
And
world.
2 hours later, he has the complete response to the RFP with one person, not 2.5 over 2 weeks.
Right.
That just gave him capacity. He said, John, we would only bid on 2 to 3 projects a year. And each one of those things is $250,000 to $1.5 million in stuff. But it was such a pain. We would literally only do 2 or 3 a year. He said, we can bid on 3 to 5 a month now. He said, this will literally mean millions of dollars. That's what I mean by taking capacity and selling into it. It's possible. But he was the CEO, Mike. He wasn't an IT guy. He wasn't a marketing guy. He was a CEO guy going through our training, just go, I want to see what this AI thing is. He built it
Changed his
to
business
create millions of
overnight.
dollars. Yeah.
Unbelievable, John. John, thanks. I have so many questions, but our time flies. So we're going to have you back on in the future. For our
Love to.
listeners who are excited about what they're hearing, how can they stay in touch with you and follow your work?
Well, thanks for asking, Mike. I tell you, here's what I would love to do for your listeners. I need pressure to write this second book. Okay, so if they'll go to ingrain.ai/2026, they can get on a waiting list, and if they tell me that they heard about me through the queue, then I'll give them a digital copy of the book for free when it comes out. And it's the /2026 means I got to get it done. That's my
Nice, very
pressure.
generous. Well, it puts a little pressure on you. Yeah,
It does. It does. I
got
need
some
to.
time, but
There you go.
got to get it done. All right, John. And they can look for Ingrain AI at Amazon or their favorite
Yeah, yeah,
bookstore.
it's available on Amazon, and that's another thing I got pressure to do. I got to get the audio book out. I'm hoping I can get that out in the next month, and then I need to get a larger print version out as well because somebody told me, "Oh, you don't want to have more than X number of pages," and so I compressed the font, and then when it showed up, I was like, "That's too small."
Needs to be bigger. You've been very generous with your time. I know you're busy, but I promise we will have you back on, and we'll put some links in the show notes too for our listeners who want to keep track and stay in touch with you for sure, John.
Awesome,
John,
thanks, Mark.
thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. It's great work, and we're definitely going to stay in touch.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
All right, a great episode of In the Queue with John Munsell. We'll talk to you again soon.